Growing up in North Las Vegas in the 80s was a unique experience. I remember doing the Running Man and Kid and Play to LL Cool J's I Need an Around the Way Girl, going to sleep and waking up to NWS Straight Out of Compton. With this newfound music to put lyrics and beat, which would become the musical journey into what Los Angeles gave us first before any other city outside of California, gang banging. It was already a tough task to navigate around the crack dealers and smokers, con artists who've moved to Vegas from around America with their latest game. My dad, before he fell victim to crack, we would be together daily. He equipped me and also had a saying, they be trying to run the weakest game on the strongest nigga. Once my parents divorced, it was me and my mother the rest of the way. My mother had me at 15 years old. 6 days later, she turned 16, so our birthdays are 6 days apart. I admit I was a very hard-headed young boy. I'd blame part of my dad spoiling me my first 8 years of my life. There was nothing I asked my dad for that I didn't get. My dad was a trash man back when the trash cans were metal, and I think the trash stayed in his skin because he had the worst smelling feet I've ever smelled, and I was tortured with help taking them hot super stinky boots off every night. Poor me. My dad also put me in football, which I ended up being good at due to my speed. I also loved basketball, but my early years were terrible. Now back to the city. I'm from Vegas, North Las Vegas to be exact. You gotta be from Vegas to understand. At the time living in Vegas, we were still a small little known city without any professional sports teams. The biggest thing we had was the An1mat1on run in Rebels, who was coming off the championship, and the city was a huge party. But in our home and in the area around me, it was nothing like a party. Father was gone and mom was a young single mother who fell to the addiction of alcohol and gambling. Me, as a 11-year-old, I chose the streets, unfortunately, or the streets chose me. During this time, I would end up joining a gang, start stealing from stores and cars, and end up going to juvenile several times. The first time my mom tried saving me from the streets, she sent me up to Reno to live with my aunt and 2 cousins. That didn't work because I took my bad behavior up north with me and ended up getting kicked out of the only school I have ever been kicked out of, so I was shipped back to Vegas. Now in my early teens, I start to think I'm more advanced in life than I really am, and more dangerous activities start to enter into my life. Even lost my best friend since kindergarten to tragic gun violence at age 14, always remembered, forever missed. No one really knew or understood how this death impacted my life, and I've never really expressed it. Me and Manzel met the first day of kindergarten class at recess due to him beating me in a race which I hated. And ever since that day, we were locked in. It made it better when we realized our grandparents, whom we both lived with, stayed up the street from each other, so every day, and I mean every day, we were together. It was because of him I joined the same gang, which was both of our worst choices we ever made in life. I say this because joining a gang in Manzel, we lost someone who I know to be talented and gifted in the areas I was, but better. Losing his life at the age of 14 in my lap due to another guy we grew up with playing with guns. Rest in peace, Manzel. At this time, my mom senses that she's losing her only child to the streets of North Las Vegas, so she sells as much of our stuff as she could, and we moved to Atlanta, Georgia in 1995. At this time, Atlanta was a totally different world compared to Las Vegas, and I immediately fell in love with the place. I was there for the Braves winning the World Series that year. I was there for the Super Bowl and 1996 Centennial Olympics. It seemed like something was always going on in Atlanta. And then something came across my world that I didn't think was possible, and haven't been a part of anything anywhere that closely resembles what I witnessed and was a part of that year. They called it Freaknik. If I could describe Freaknik, I would say for one weekend, every black college student from America and their friends would come to Atlanta, and the whole entire city would be a huge non-stop party. Even on the freeway, I mean everywhere, the entire city. Still to this day, I haven't seen anything or have been part of anything that comes close to the fun and adult fun I was having as a mannish 16-year-old. You would have thought after all this fun I was having, my life of crime would be behind me, but it wasn't, and I was caught breaking into a house and sentenced to juvenile boot camp. It's here in the boot camp where I would get my get early at 17, and that was because once I got out I didn't want to attend school anymore, and so I did. First time taking the test, passed it easily, and now I was done with school. Once I get out of boot camp, I run into a guy who unknowingly changed Vegas hood swag all the way from Atlanta, and his name is Danny. Danny Boy, or D-Boy for short. I say this because before I left Vegas, you either was a pretty boy or a gangster. You had zero gangsters in the hood wearing polo and J's until I came back from Atlanta. And I have to give a huge thanks to D-Boy. Danny had so much polo gear, a challenge to himself is he gave me all his polo gear and he switched to Nautica. I couldn't wait to get back to Vegas. Me and D-Boy would remain close to this day, but at a time when we were 17, we committed a crime in Georgia that had a guaranteed 10-year sentence. Thank God we ended up beating the charges. Once we got out, Danny was done with criminal activity for the rest of his life. Me, unfortunately, no, and then life came in a way that a 18-year-old knucklehead was not ready for, and that was in the form of a son. And this is where you are supposed to begin to mature into an adult. What do you think happened next? Tune in to part 2 of my life in animation.